It's 3 in the morning and you're awake again, doing the math on a life you're sure you've wasted. Everything you built is gone, and the silence in the house is the loudest thing you've ever heard. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man can withdraw into himself and find a fortress no loss can breach. And tonight, one sentence a stranger said 20 years ago is about to walk back into that house and show a man named Cal whether it's true. Cal was 44, and he sat at his kitchen table in the dark because turning on the light felt like more than he could manage. The repair business he'd spent 11 years building had closed its doors that afternoon. The bank had the house. His wife had left the year before that, and the only sound now was the low hum of an empty refrigerator. I had all of it, he thought, and I have nothing to show for any of it. He looked like a man deciding what to do next. He had already decided to do nothing. He didn't know why the memory surfaced when it did, but sitting there in the dark, Cal was suddenly 24 again, standing at a bus stop in the rain, certain he was about to become someone. An old man had sat on the bench beside him that day, coat worn thin at the elbows, watching the road. For no reason Cal could see, the man had turned to him and spoken. "You won't understand this today. That's how the real ones work." Then, quieter, "Everything you build can be taken from you. The part that decides what you do next, that part can't." He'd said one more thing, stranger than the rest. On your worst night, don't wait for morning. Get up and do one small thing before the sun. That's how you find out which part is still yours. Cal had nodded the way you nod at strangers. Polite, already gone. The bus came. By the next stop, he'd forgotten the old man completely. Some people just like to talk, he'd thought. And he was right. And he was wrong. And it would take him 20 years to learn which. There was one thing more. As Cal had stepped onto the bus, the old man said it almost to himself. "I'm telling you because I lost everything once. A boatyard, a wife, a name people trusted, and understood this too late to use it. I learned it too late. You won't." Cal hadn't even turned around. Now at the kitchen table, Cal could remember the rain, and the worn coat, and the old man's tired face. But the sentence itself was gone. Only the shape of it remained, the feeling that it had once mattered. He pressed his palms against his eyes. "It's too late for me too," he thought. Whatever he said, it's too late. Outside, a night bus came around the corner, its headlights sweeping slow across the kitchen wall. And the low diesel rumble of it, the exact sound from that rainy bus stop, pulled the words up out of 20 years of dark. Everything you build can be taken from you. The part that decides what you do next, that part can't. Cal sat very still. Then he understood the thing the old man had known he wouldn't, not for a long time. The business was gone. The house was gone. He had spent 11 years building that business, 6 years in the house. He had thought those things were him, that losing them meant losing himself. Sitting in the dark, he turned the sentence over, testing it against everything the night had taken. He waited for it to feel false. It didn't. The man who decided what to do next was still sitting at this table. That part had never been theirs to take. It was not yet 4. Don't wait for morning. Do one small thing before the sun. Cal stood up. His legs didn't want to. He turned on the light. He found a pen and the back of an unpaid bill, and he began to write. Small, ordinary. The first honest plan he'd put on paper in a year. By the time the sky went gray, he had filled the page. 18 months later, Cal owned almost nothing he'd owned before. A small repair shop, rented. A room above it, less than half of what he had lost. But he stood behind that counter like a man who could not be emptied out, because he had already been emptied out once, and found the floor of himself still there, still standing. One evening, waiting at a bus stop in the rain, he noticed a young man beside him. Sharp suit, certain of everything, exactly the way Cal had once been certain. He almost said nothing. Then he turned. You won't understand this today, Cal said. That's how the real ones work. You will lose things you were sure to find you. Let them go. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel, the one room no loss can enter, where the man who decides what you do next still waits. They can take everything you built. They cannot take the builder. If a single sentence has ever stayed with you for years before you finally understood it, tell me what it was in the comments. I read every one. And if this story found you at the right time, send it to one person who needs it tonight. Subscribe for one story like this every week. The bus pulled in. Cal stepped on, found a seat by the window, and watched the rain run sideways across the glass. An old man now, worn elbows on his coat, riding home through the dark.